This is Diggs. We're back for episode 44 of Revivalcast, Mastery of Deception. We've got legendary Neurotoxin joining us. He hasn't been on for a while. I think he's been on once or twice, maybe before. We should have a lot to talk about just from that alone. We also have Zero joining us and Sailkite as almost always. Um, yeah, we'll be discussing the dev blog and also a couple of interesting threads that I saw were one was on how Lovecrafty will Revival be, and the other was friendly fire, if we get to those. And I see Snipe is in chat. Howdy. So, Neuro, you haven't been with this for a while, I think. How long ago were you on? Do you remember?
It was like a month or two, I think. I'm
Oh, it
pretty sure it was
was
this year.
okay. Um, yeah, I guess 44 episodes. I'm starting the space on who was where. Um, so remind us again what are the things that you're most interested in for Revival specifically? What are you looking forward to most?
I It'd probably be a matter of trying to find out things that I'm not excited about. Actually, everything about the game's great, and then so many different layers of it. Not only trying to get beyond the conventional paradigms that we're used to, but actually trying to go forward with something where every event is presented in a really meaningful and specialized way. It's all of the things coming together. The fact that it's all happening in an integrated world, it means that even if you're being a Jurgen kind of ends up being playing the trauma team minigame a whole lot. That's awesome. That's great that that's actually in the context of a whole world where your actions have consequences and you're potentially saving people from a much worse fate should they actually die of whatever it is that's affecting them. Just as an example, there's so many layers that make the game amazing, and there's so much stuff that it's intriguing to me because I don't know about it yet. It hasn't been revealed to us yet. We're not sure how it's going to work. The team might not even be 100% sure, solid on everything. So there's still that mystery of the stuff we don't know, how it's going to be presented, what awesome systems they're going to use to put this, that, and the other that's going to help, really wrap everything up and put everything in one full gameplay. Not even a cycle, not even a loop of gameplay. It's like this giant sphere that you can go wherever you want and you're going to keep going to different points rather than, some games it's just kind of keep going around in circles. So, to that extent, the fact that there's so many layers, so many dynamic layers to it, so much that we know that's already amazing, so much we don't know that's also going to be amazing, that's really what's keeping me interested.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the way that affects me is there's so many different layers. That's why I have so many different alts planned because there's so many paths that I want to explore. So I want one alt that's going to explore being transgender, one alt that's going to be exploring being elderly, one that's going to be exploring being young, one that's going to try and max the madness up as far as possible, one that's going to try and max spirit and death up as far as
You
possible.
know,
Um,
Diggs, I gotta say about the alcoholism, there's one thing I've been thinking about a lot is if I really, really, truly make a character that's that in depth, I realize, crap, that's gonna be a hell of a lot of work actually getting the character to that point. I don't know if I'm gonna have the time to be able to do that, and if I'm gonna get lucky enough to get all the things lined up to do that. In many cases, I'd rather just write a really detailed story and send it to Omba and say, please put this NPC in the game. And honestly, I'd more likely than not, I'm just going to be a dungeon crawler. I'm going to be, give me my sword, point me towards danger, and I'll come back with something's head or hide. That's probably what I'm going to play. And I'm going to, really push that angle.
yeah, I mean, some of my alts are going to be short-lived in any case. So, um, once I get to the height of madness, I don't necessarily need to stay there and play it anymore. Um, and some, might be trying to become old as fast as possible. How quickly can I bump up my temporal damage? Um, But that kind of leads us back. Someone was asking why I don't just do uh, 20 plus aliases like in the blog for the chameleon. I could just do a bunch of different aliases, but it's gonna what I'm looking to explore is gonna the impact of each of those experiences is gonna impact one character too much. To try and do all that with just one character. But Zero, what did you think? What popped out at you reading through the blog this week?
A couple things. And I kind of apologize. I didn't really get a good chance to read it in depth, so I was kind of rereading it just a bit before this. So normally I kind of have to sort my thoughts and I write them off on the side so I can really kind of keep track of what I'm thinking about. But
Uh-huh.
kind of a few things as one. So obviously, a really interesting person's got multiple faces, I guess, so to speak, multiple people that she is playing, but they're. I guess they seemed. I guess they seemed a little spread out to me. It was, or maybe interesting that we have the entertainer, performer. I can't remember the Erskine, something like that. That we start off with to a writer, and then to some kind of magical user. So I guess it's interesting to me that I what actually I guess what stood out to me most was actually just wondering this skill point allocation, a bit of min maxing, if you will, of
Right.
which abilities were being used and how much were they in there, what's mastered, if anything, or pinned, because they seemed relatively far apart in terms of maybe not so much writing and entertaining, but with us knowing that magic is something that requires so much unique amount of effort, where was time to do that, and also kind of unrelated to it is just motive. What was the character's reason for wanting to have these very disparate, lives? I mean, they're kind of nomadic. They're selling their body, not necessarily literally, but they're selling the entertainment of their body to a certain degree, and they're writing fiction and basically at least a somewhat successful author if they have a cottage out of Crown's Rock and they're getting royalties, and then they're part of some sisterhood of out of Congarai that has a whole another connotation to it. So I guess it was really interesting to see a very spread out character, but what made me wonder what that player or character's motivation is for having those disparate lives and also where their skill points were because we only have so many. So
Yeah, I couldn't understand why there was so much concern about making money as an entertainer if the character does have the skill to sell a book. Like, say she's
exactly.
desperate to get more money, she has the skill to write a book or to sell it or whatever, and
I think
use an
being
alias or something to
Well, I think
there.
being an
Right.
author is more high profile than an entertainer. An entertainer, you might be popular in an area, but as an author, your books can be spread far and wide. That name can be known across the world. So
Mm.
you have a little bit more secrecy as more of a private entertainer than you do as an author who's world renowned. So I can definitely see layers of that. You've got different forms of income. You've got the trickle in from the royalties from the book, as well as more direct earnings as an entertainer to help fund things. And I would imagine from how comfortable the character really felt with this whole journey that they took. It seems like it's something that they do a lot, so they probably need to keep their resources tidy and make sure that they can do it frequently.
Yeah, but I mean, if I were an entertainer and I'm concerned about whether or not I'll make enough money to have this cushy um, trip, then I'd be like, hey, I just found this rare, unknown volume of whatever the writer's name was. Nobody's ever seen it before. It should be really expensive, and I would sell that,
It's a bit of
Well,
self-promoting
there's
there.
an
I
right?
like
issue
it.
with that. I mean, but
I got
like
this on the black
living.
market somewhere, or a patron gifted this to me, and I just want to,
Well,
right?
Snipe has a
Like,
good point in chat, is they may not sell well or consistently either. So entertainment's probably a lot more, direct with people want to be entertained. You're there to entertain. It's a lot easier than like, oh, gee, I'm looking for a book today. People actually being on the lookout for that, and especially for that book in particular.
And I guess there is locality. I mean, because we know there's different languages, so that could play into it too. It does kind of mention or imply that author out of Crown's Rock, but I mean that very well could just be Crown's Rock, I suppose. And then, and it kind of touches on it. We do have a desire to travel comfortably, so it's. I mean, she says, I could already make the trip, but I don't want to be a scrub, so I want to go in the gilded carriage. So it could just be that she likes that
Well, I mean, that also could be
extra.
part of maintaining the persona that that
Yeah,
character who travels, from X to Y will only do it in luxury, and you would never see them in, a shipping cart or whatever, along with furniture and parcels and stuff. You're only going to see them in nice conditions. So I could understand doing that to make sure that they uh,
with shipping
don't get
containers, it
caught.
works for my people.
yeah, and maybe Yana isn't able to read. The dancer doesn't know how to read. Maybe that's part of the persona, just to keep it so far away from the writer. Nobody even would suspect that she could be um,
Which I
Marielle, is
guess
it?
would be important if
Because
you're right. If you really want to sell these individual lives, it's more. You can't just act them. You really do have to live them to sell them convincingly. So that does make sense.
Yeah. And all of that kind of makes me think of the entertainer actually being kind of the gateway to being a spy. Part of being able to, essentially being a method actor, being able to assume the persona and completely live it to the best of your extent, knowing every nuance about that character, who they are, where they came from, Stanislavski's questions for actors in the scene, and beyond that. That's the sort of thing that really helps to reinforce that I am this person, and when put under pressure, questioned by guards, accosted by bandits, whatever, you're able to maintain that persona, even if just in the back of your head you're whipping up a spell that you're about to use to make your escape.
Yeah, makes sense.
Sailkite, we haven't heard from you. What did you think about the
So,
blog?
so there's a lot here, and in fact, a whole lot more than just what's on the surface. I was more so thinking about the implications of this particular character than the person who would, for instance, be playing this character. Um, though I think it's totally justified if you're the kind of player who enjoys dabbling a lot or who enjoys um, moving around between a lot of different systems or endeavors just because, I don't know, you happen to get bored with stuff quickly or what have you, then I think it's totally justified to go ahead and take an alias route, a chameleonic or social butterfly kind of route, and explore different stuff. Jack of all trades, master of none, still better than a master of one kind of dealio. If that suits you as a player. But the actual in-world implications of this blog, I think, are quite fascinating. So at first, when I saw this sort of migration stuff, and then later came across the fact that Inanna was part of a cult in Anakatha, I was originally thinking, we know that there's a tradition, I don't know whether it's still practiced by anyone, or whether it has any extant, small groups that practice it, of the Goravi taking a nomadic stance for following the stars and such. However, if I were assuming that that was the case, then the fact that, for instance, Mariel is in Crownstock every month would be somewhat less sensible, because presumably the stars do not move that fast. By the sound of it, they at least move somewhat within a year or a couple larger time scales than just an in-game month. So that sort of ruled out my initial thought. But then looking more closely at the Anakatha side, um, we know. Let me find the paragraph so I can get the exact text right. Um, where is it? We're given a detail that when when this particular character is in her role as Inanna, she dons white linens and an ivory mask as she's traveling across the sea. Now, originally I was kind of trying to think cleverly about, oh, look, especially with the detail about the sacrifice later, like, yeah, blood sacrifice, this is totally going to be paint that white shit red kind of stuff. But I actually think, after sort of reflecting on it, that this is more so some sort of dark Hylathi cult. I don't even know, or Hylath cult. The fact that this particular character moves in and out of identities rapidly and frequently amends itself well to sort of the aspect of Hylath that has to deal with deception or illusion. And of course beauty to a certain degree, if we take the entertainer side of that as well. We weren't given any hints about the particular fiction that she writes as Mariel, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was some degree of intrigue to that.
Sure.
And so I tend to think that this is actually Hylath at work somehow, or a worshiper, a follower of Hylath, and that the Anakathan cult is a transplant from the Falkirk stuff, because Hylath isn't strictly native to Anakatha or Conquerai, so it would have been a foothold thing. It's
I
not
thought she was
really
Crown's Rock
something,
and Sky Pass.
but also Anakatha. The cult part is Anakatha.
Well, and Anakatha sounds like a
No, I
stopping
thought
point, though, just because it's by sea, so access to the port there, but then she goes over land to Conquerai, so I don't know if it's actually based out of Anakatha.
yeah, but I'm saying I would expect Tylath to be more prevalent in Sky Pass or Crown's Rock.
Oh, I agree.
Not
I
much
agree.
in
I mean,
Anakatha.
she's part of the Deno, Hylath, and like Sirith kind of set of deities that are, I think, more commonly referred to as Falkirk, uh, but or the Falkirk deities, right? But if they're
And I don't
stationed in
think
Anakatha,
right, and
go ahead.
well, I guess we'd have to know what kind of sacrifice it is. Doesn't
Yeah,
have to be a
right.
human sacrifice.
Yeah, that's true. So I
For
think
all
it's
we
a
know,
Maybe
very
if
they're
you made it,
sacrificing an ugly statue because it's ugly.
there's all
right
kinds of ways to have
natural
a
iconoclasm, man. But yeah, no, I think
there's
this
all
is a
kinds of
very, I
ways to
think this
have
is
a
a
virgin
much
sacrifice, right? You don't just have to kill them.
true. But
True.
yeah, I think the potentials here are quite actually diverse, and so that has me very intrigued on some of the more um, ephemeral details or unmentioned things that I'd very much like to have mentioned, so that I can then work out in my mind certain probabilities about what's really going on. I think it's quite interesting.
The
Very, very
presentation
cool.
was really great because, we're reading through in the beginning. I think it's when we're first introduced to her as Yana, and she's in Sky Pass trying to drum up some money so she can go visit with her sisters
Yeah.
for the holiday,
Yep.
Yeah, which is totally
which is
innocuous.
true.
I mean, I've kudos to Bob because I totally read that. I was like, oh, okay, she's trying to go see her family. Good girl. Yeah.
Hmm.
So one thing that, after hearing what Salakite had to say, that really strikes me as interesting is, what about the prioritization of how obvious certain tags are depending on how you're presenting yourself? For example, in the persona as a occultist, there's a lot higher chance that somebody would be able to potentially detect that if they have similar tags, or have a tag rub off on them, versus if you're the entertainer, that stuff I would imagine is going to be buried way, way, way far away, and you would need to really like drill down and know that character, and they're not going to let you know them that well before you would actually access those tags. So I'm wondering if there's actually if it's the tags are kind of like a fluid system depending on how you're presenting yourself, not only what your identity is, but even your visual appearance and how well you fit with the customs in the region and everything. How well you'll be able to kind of hide certain tags as you need to. And obviously, it's not something where you're just going to have this big old sheet of tags and you control click all the ones that you don't want to show up.
Right.
It would be more, trying to selectively change how you're presenting yourself, so that way the stuff that's more relevant to what you're doing is up front, and the stuff that you want to keep hidden is as tucked away as possible.
Yeah,
Uh,
so go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I mean, I suppose, because we haven't been given any kind of mechanism of how we hide things, so it'd be interesting if there actually is a skill or something that can, because we know divination can, at a higher level, discern a sense of tags, not the actual tags, but a sense of it. So is there something that would let you hide that in reverse? I suppose, on the other hand, if you really wanted to just try to game the system, we know that tags sit in as long as they're not flags, tags sit in a queue and they deprecate downwards, from use. So I guess if you were really, we don't know what the limit is. It could be too huge to actually do this effectively, but I guess if you really tried, you could try to rotate personalities at a rate that lets tags kind of fall down the list, and the next one you assume is the one that brings those ones and kind of refreshes them. But there's a lot of missing pieces to that, and also probably not realistically, something you could do, but it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering how that would be related to NPCs recognizing the person, because it seems like they would have to be recognizing tags associated with the alias, not necessarily the body itself. Um,
I think
and
that's
then
correct.
there and then there are other aspects, like body language. So, for those of you who don't know, I've got various. I mean, I'm kind of a jack of all trades. So, yeah, I was a localization manager for Activision for a while, but I'm also an actor, singer, dancer. And right after college, I studied with Alvin Ailey for a summer. And after that, I'd be walking around and people would just like walking off the subway and people would say, "Oh, are you a dancer?" And I'd be like, "Well, like I'm not a professional dancer. Like, I'm a great dancer for an actor, but I'm not like I wouldn't really call myself a dancer." And I was just walking from the subway. Why how am I walking? And certain people would say, like, no, I can tell by the way you carry yourself that you've had dance training. And like, "Oh, okay, maybe I need to change the way I walk." I'm not sure what that means exactly.
Well, I guess so
Um,
that implies that they have they have an appreciation for that art form and pay attention to it themselves. Otherwise,
right,
like
but
I
there
sure as
was
hell wouldn't be
something,
able to tell.
right, but there's something about or I was doing Shakespeare, and at the end of the Shakespeare show, somebody said, "You're a dancer, right?" And I'm like, "I was doing Shakespeare. Why? Why are you asking me if I was a dancer?" But they were like, "No, the way you carry your body, I can tell that you've had
And so, yeah, so I can see that,
training."
right? That same sense could translate into the way tags are, picked up by uh, the NPCs in that case, right? It's or other players, I guess. Again, if they have the right skills.
Right. So it's like,
Well,
as the writer, she might have to make sure that she changes her posture so that people don't recognize her as a dancer. Um,
Wear different
like I'm
types of
just wondering,
shoes.
or see, I'm really am. When we were following EverQuest Next, not EverQuest Next. Well, that and Landmark, they have heroic movement, and somebody had asked once for villainous movement, and I'm really hoping that we can have this in Revival so that you can switch to like shuffling along, and it shouldn't just all be running heroically. We should be able to shuffle along and be hunchbacked and
Sure,
all
I
that
need to be
stuff.
able
So
to
I'd like to,
trudge.
yeah, I'd like to be able to switch those postures for different aliases. That would be cool too if we
Diggs, do you
if
want
we
to procedurally stub your toe and be able to limp?
Well, see, then I'd be upset that it was forced on me and not my choice. But
What if you're just pretending to stub your toe and procedurally limp? And then it's your
Cody Hill
agency to
walking
do
is
it.
a dead giveaway. Yeah.
But it would. I mean, it would make sense. I mean, especially if you wanted to assume those roles. I mean, if you wanted to, for the purpose of misdirection or otherwise, our character in the blog, in her cult or whatever it is, face, a mask covers her. There's specific garb, so there's, regardless of the fact that you might be able to recognize, okay, that person wearing that garb is related to whatever they may be related to. You don't know the identity of the person, but for her. Writing one, as you said, I mean, it could be something where they walk, I don't know, very distractedly. I mean, absentmindedly, maybe. I mean, the point is, it would be nice to have, or to do it intentionally. Walk with a fake limp. It's things that can be used in misdirection would be nice to have, but I don't know if it should be tied to. Or I guess, are you saying should it be something that can be toggled, or is it something that would be tied automatically to that persona?
I think hopefully toggled
Okay.
so that you have some control over it if you'd like to have control over it. I mean, there should probably be some skill involved with how well you're able to pull all that off, but um, hopefully there's some of that that's under the control of the player
I mean,
character.
I would imagine there's probably some other things like they probably didn't. There wasn't really that much detail about how much the character uses different vocabulary or talking in different ways under the different persona. Obviously, the writer and probably the cultist would be the ones that are the most, you know, verbally acute or whatever. They're going to have the best vocabulary of all of them. They're going to be saying the most eloquent things, but the entertainer, maybe it would be more in the context of the performance or whatever. Maybe if they're doing something like Shakespeare, they're going to be talking in a different way. It's going to be more like the old English versus modern speaking sort of thing. And potentially in the other persona using language in different ways. Likewise, your attire, especially traveling long distances, you would imagine people are going to have their day stuff, their night stuff, going into different biomes, different regions. You're going to have different attire entirely. And then also, depending on how popular veils are as an accessory, as we'd seen in one of the previous blogs, being able to have something that's fashionable but also kind of covers your face, it makes being able to hide your identity that much easier.
Yeah, I
And
read
in a time,
something. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, in a setting like this too, I don't even think that would be considered odd by people. Especially travelers wearing hooded, hoods or cloaks or coverings over their face. I mean, we see that now and tend to find it not necessarily odd, but it stands out more oddly than it does maybe in a society or civilization like this. So we tend to think again, if someone did that now, if I walked around with just a face mask on, someone
No, if you're
considers
in
me suspicious.
if you're in China, you'd be wearing a mask. If you were in an Islamic country, the women might be wearing veils. So
True.
I
If a
just read
rebellion wearing yeah.
I just read a story. I think it came through on my Facebook feed, and I'm about to date myself. But the actor Lee Marvin, he was on the Johnny Carson show back in the day, and he was telling this story about his service. I think Korea might have been World War II, but I think it was his service during the Korean War. And he was saying that yeah, he got like a um, what's the medal that you get? He got a Medal of Honor or something like that. Um, for his service, and he said, "Oh no, this was World War II." So he was on that beach. What was the beach where everybody went and got
Normandy.
massacred?
Yeah.
Normandy, yeah. So he goes on Normandy. He's one of the people that were moved up to the top of a mountain or top of a hill and survived. But he got shot on his and got helped up the mount up the hill. And then there was one guy who was a commander. He was really instrumental in getting everybody who survived away safely. And on the way back, the guy talked to him, and that guy was who we know, my age, as Captain Kangaroo. Um, and he's like a kid's personality. And then he mentions another guy who was Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers was also a war hero, so much so that he had tats all up and down his arms, and that's why he always wore sweaters and long sleeves to cover his military tats.
Nice.
And it's like, who would have thought?
Oh
I
my
gotta
gosh.
look this
But
up.
after the war, I think he became a pastor or something like that, and he wanted to devote his life to helping kids. And has a
Interestingly enough, he hated television. He didn't like it, but it was kind of a decision on his part. Since it's out there, there needs to be a positive force on it.
Yeah, and I think it says he's Mr. Rogers was a U.S. Navy SEAL. I mean, that's just amazing.
Oh,
So
There was
yeah.
one question swinging back on the blog. Why was she in SkyPass to begin with? Anyone?
Well, you see, so I don't know, right? So that I was thinking originally, like, she's probably migrating to find, or to keep an eye on certain stars or whatever, given the end. But of
And
course,
that's,
I think
I guess,
ruled
yeah,
that
that's.
out.
I just kind of popped in my head because I mean, okay, she's in Crown Rocks because writer gets her royalties, puts out her next book. She's in Anakoth to get to Congarai so that she can do her cult thing. Why is she in SkyPass? I mean, she's there as an entertainer, yes, but it alludes that she's been an entertainer in other areas and she'll never do those areas again. But so that kind of throws off why. I mean, it sounds like this isn't something she, or that implies
Well,
to
it
me that this is something
says
she did as a necessity. So she's still doing it potentially as a necessity. But why, if it was like related to her cult or something like that, why SkyPass, where magic is such a strictly regulated? So I don't know. Like I said, it's just kind of weird to me that she'd
but
be in.
she's not
Uh,
practicing magic there,
Yeah,
so that's fine. But it's also easier for her to. It says it's easier, less effort, more lucrative than working in Congarai or slumming in Tide's End.
which I guess
So
just kind of ties back into why is she even doing it if she's.
Well, I can
I get
understand
like
why actually, because she hails them for having their private guard, private security. She might have a lot of private stuff stored there, and maintaining that room there. That's where she's got her own little stash, her own little vault of secret documents. So,
That's a good point. Yeah.
because if they know who she is, obviously they're going to go to the cottage, and that's not going to be defended. But the room at the Cat and Cradle, oh hell yes, it's going to be defended. So
Okay,
that makes sense.
that seems like. Okay, yeah, I was just
yeah, I
kind of
think
curious.
it seems like it's just an easy place to lie low, make some easy cash, and why not? I mean, how else is she gonna? What else is she gonna do while she's waiting for the stars to align?
And now you know how I'll make money in BA.
If you've got the skills, if you've got the skills.
That's a good question. Bet Money asks. The interesting question to me is which identity is her, because depending on the answer, it paints vastly different pictures of the character.
I
And
was actually about to mention that, right? Because part of the conversation we were having earlier about how NPCs recognize, different features and see through aliases and stuff. Like, I imagine, and Neuro, you might back me up on this with some of your kind of design experience, is that, someone's default person is probably just alias 0, right? And all the functions and methods that attach to aliases technically also apply to the core person, right? Alias 0, but then if you want to, do alias stuff, it becomes alias 1, 2, 3, 4, etc.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to actually organize that data. The way that I would think, if this is a player character, the way I would think it would work is the initial character you create is the one that is persona A until you've gotten to a point where you've gone above and beyond. You've completely transcended that persona to a different one. Like maybe she started as the author and eventually became the cultist. Then perhaps at that point, because she is more beholden to the cult and more devoted to the cult, she is now a part of that. That is her main persona, and she has essentially kind of shed her initial identity, perhaps entirely, if she's trying to hide who she is, trying to remove herself from her family and where she was born and all of that stuff, might be a part of that. Um, so it's really hard to say like which one is the real her. Is it the
or
her that
if
she
any.
used to be, or is it the her that she the most dedicated thing she is now? Because it seems like all of these other tasks and all these other persona are dedicated to her being able to maintain membership and stature and participate in the rituals with the sisterhood.
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
say that it's especially interesting because she's going to different continents um, and immersing herself into different cultures. Um, when I speak Japanese, my personality changes to some degree. I have to be more polite than I normally would be in English just so I can be as informal and not rude.
The
Just I
episode
would
of,
like to see that.
the episode of King of the Hill where he has to tell us Japanese half brother how to if you can't get your with all the bureaucracy, if you're not getting your way, tell them that you're going to kick their ass. And when he finally does that, the guy's eyes wide. He's like, okay, okay, I'll let me take care of this, because he's going between two booths and talking to the guy, and then bows, goes to the next booth, talks to the guy, and bows, and he's like doing this back and forth, and Hank's like, wait, no, tell him you're gonna kick his ass.
Mhm.
and
Um,
and for him to even force that out, I am going to kick your ass. It's just so
right,
funny.
right. Um, and my Japanese girlfriend in college, we met. Well, I kind of met her twice. So um, she actually was in my ballet class. Um, but I barely noticed her in my ballet class because in ballet class she was super, super shy and would like hide behind curtains and shit. I would never see her. But when I would go dancing at the club, she was completely different, decked out in bracelets and gaudy outfits, and she's like super outgoing on the dance floor. And I danced with her several times at the club, and then weeks later, I realized she's in my ballet class. This is the same person, but she acts completely differently in these two places. Um, Amazing. Like, some people just change. So, which is the core personality or which is the core? That's kind of an interesting question because depending on where you are or how you're immersing yourself, um, it could just be very different. Because when I came back, so my freshman year of college, I went to a historically black college in Tennessee, and when I came back for Christmas, a girl I grew up with was like, "I've never heard so many curse words in one sentence in my entire life." And so I grew up in a black neighborhood, but going to this black college, like every other word was a curse word, and I picked that up and didn't even realize that my language had changed when I got back home.
Had
Because I was,
improved.
yeah. Um, yeah, which is the core personality? Because it just depends on, there
Well,
could
this
be
is again
many
why
different
that
facets of the same person.
this is actually why that underlying motive though is interesting to me from is because it's effort it's a spreading of your skills. It's a lot of deception and method acting, I guess. So why? I mean, we won't know from this plot, but that drives the why for me. Why is one of your identities a involved in this cult? Why the why the migratory pattern or nomadic living? I mean, so again, it's more of a character story, thing to me than anything else. It's just why do this? What's the ultimate angle?
Yeah, and
I mean,
that's
there's a
another thing
chance
that,
that
go
she's
ahead.
just a confidence woman. There's a chance that she's just playing the role of confidence woman and likes to mess with people,
Yeah,
right? I mean, like when I was reading, I was like, man, this sounds totally like a con man, right? Like,
yeah.
you learn stuff, improvise it on the fly, get involved with a lot of circles and techniques and skills, and then you move around and you do it again.
Well,
You have a posh lifestyle because you're successful at it and capable of deception and manipulation, and blah blah blah, yada yada yada.
the
I'm
other
still backing the high lab cult thing just because it's more interesting, but
yeah,
it
that
could just be the role she likes.
but you might be right about that. But you guys mentioned skills, and there's something that kind of gets forgotten in that is we don't actually have to be 100% responsible for all of our skills. We don't know if she has tailors that she goes to get the attire for the different areas, a makeup artist that's actually part of the sisterhood that
Oh,
she
sure.
knows
Yeah.
who helps get her prepped and dye her hair and all of that stuff. Various people that forge documents and stuff for her, or connections that she has for the different identity papers and everything. So there's potentially a fence for anything that she steals as an entertainer. She might be a pickpocket too. So that's the sort of thing that it's you don't have just your own skills. You have the skills of everybody who you can pay for or get a favor from or otherwise leverage. So what you can't do on your own, you can get help with, and so long as they're trustworthy, you're able to keep maintaining everything, and it's not going to be a problem.
Yeah, it just becomes curious. Like, she's got to be good at dancing. She's apparently great at summoning or whatever the magic ritual is going to be. So I guess ritual magic. Um, is she also good at languages as she goes to these vastly different places? I mean, it's just curious to think about all of the skills that she would need. How many skills does she need to be a master at ritual magic?
Exactly. I
Um,
mean, it's one of those. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut out. As well, it is. There's still a lot of skills implied that she has to know: languages, writing,
right,
negotiating,
right, right.
entertaining. So yeah.
Well, the languages, though, for areas that she's just passing through, she might only need to know a limited vocabulary of 50 words, and everything else is being exchanged
True.
with handing over papers and money.
That's
Yeah,
true.
she may not need to know whatever language they're speaking in Conquerai or
Or
Anacotha. She
maybe
may not
she'll only work
need to
with
be
people that
fluent or
speak a
semi-fluent.
language that she knows. That's you know, so she might have her preferred people that she's met from, making this trip over the years.
Yeah. Yeah, one of an epiphany that I had a few months ago, last year I was in this debate with Cheshire about concepts of chaotic good um, versus lawful good. And, those concepts don't really apply so strongly to revival, but I tend to think of myself in those terms even in real life. And I had this epiphany that even if I think of myself as chaotic good or good, um, what happens if I get cursed and in order to stay alive, I need to kill people or I need to harm people or I need to burn things?
Well, how much do
Um,
you love that alt?
well, I'm just
Well,
saying, as a
Yeah.
person, right?
Yeah.
I, I'm this person, and I think of myself. This
Yeah.
character
I understand.
thinks of him or herself as good. I'm a good person, and I love helping people. But now I have this curse, and in order to stay alive, I have to do harm in the world until I can get rid of this curse.
well,
Um,
it could be that, or it could be that they try their very best to resist. They seek aid from acolytes of whatever god or gods that they worship, and basically try to bargain that no, I'm going to die, and I'm going to die of this curse, but you're going to help me, communicate with our gods so that way they understand this and can help restore me, rather than me having to defy their will. So, there's potential for that too. Obviously, you'd have to have those resources around, and they'd have to know your name. You can't be like, oh, it is your first time in on a Sunday and you're asking for what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we just don't. The motivations could be all over the map. We don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, and I have always enjoyed the story of characters who are really firmly aligned with anything. It doesn't matter, chaotic good or whatever their stances in life. I've always enjoyed watching the descent against your own nature. So if that happened to my character, I'd have to play it out, just because. I suppose you could end it really quickly and just be like, nope, I can't do that. I'll have to kill myself or something. But you might come back still, so this could be a very tedious process. But no, I think it'd be fun to play out because I really do enjoy the story of your descent to your darker half, of whatever that may be.
Man, that actually just reminded me of like the entire beginning to end of the game Final Fantasy Tactics, how much like drama and how much everybody's roles and who are the pawns and who's
Mhm.
making the calls and stuff, and by the end it's all revealed. It's like, oh man, that was freaking crazy. You had no idea that you were going to be this and this, and they were going to be this and this, and how all that was going to be lined up, and how who was playing who. And yeah, that's some really intriguing stuff. I'm really excited to see how that sort of stuff plays out in Revival.
Yeah,
Yeah, Snipe Hunter says, though really journaling, performance, and linguistics are the only skills she needs mastery of to do what she did in the blog. See, I was thinking maybe linguistics she might not even need, depending. But she could be a terrible ritual mage, for example, and be conning that cult somehow. Yeah.
right. Yeah, so she, the player, is quickly wikiing this on the side, like, shit, how am I going to do this?
Mhm. There's a couple of other things I don't even think was in that Snipe Hunter had said. Is she an author searching something? Is she a cultist working in the shadows, or is she an entertainer just playing the angles? Yeah. It was Swaggers is a really good idea. I don't think we have that planned as something you can select yourself, though we do have different gates for if you're crippled, sick, running, walking, etc. Yeah. And as part of performance, basically, maybe you could do some of that stuff. hmm Did we get an answer? Does the Edgeworth book teach how to be as
Oh, I
ruthless
was
and
joking with that.
edgy
Don't worry about
as...
it. I was joking.
I want to answer for that. He
I will
just
teach you how to
laughs.
be
But
edgy.
Yeah, no, I was.
what is the Edgeworth book? That's what I want to
That
know.
was the
That
book
that
that
was
Renee, the right hand uh, lady of the High Priestess,
yeah, it got
defected
taken away.
with.
So
Although
Yep.
it does go to
yeah.
a rival group,
Cult.
so
Yeah.
is does that imply then, or yeah, well, I mean that opens up. I should say that doesn't imply anything. That opens up new pathways of it. Not are there multiple groups that if it's Halathi, or is it the opposing god at that point, or is it unrelated at all? And it's just they all want to accomplish the same thing, but they just don't like each other enough to do it as a group.
hmm
Oh gosh, what if it's Hoenn and fucking Morikawa? God damn it. What if it's fucking Hoenn and Morikawa? Oh my god, I'll be so mad.
Yeah,
Ah.
Morkov just wants any kind of obstacle in the way.
The
And
try
want to
I
hard
make
mean, because
god.
she travels like all over the place, and facility
Yeah,
is quite up her alley. So, I mean, I still don't dig the attire. I would still guess it's high left, but gah, gah, spooky, spooky.
So, geez, we've really talked a lot on that subject. There's still plenty
it's a
more
good
to
blog.
talk about on the idea of uh, just people hiding their identity, taking on different identities, taking on different roles, the mechanics of it, how it's going to work, how players are going to access it, how NPCs are going to assess it, how it's going to play in the story, how much you will and will not be able to avoid certain tags and certain interactions. Like there's just so many layers of it. We've talked about a lot, and it's just a really really interesting concept.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's going to be fun.
Yep. So one of the other threads that came in this week that was interesting was the friendly fire one. Um, whether or not we're going to be able to hit uh, our own guys. And the answer to that was certainly with spells, less so with weapons. That was for accidentally harming yourself. So, will friendly fire both by weapon and spell be possible in Revival? Yes. Um, can you accidentally harm yourself with spells, less so with weapons? Um, and yeah, there was one. Will a Chirurgeon or other type of healer be able to use a diagnostic skill to find out what's wrong with the character and then use the information to harm that character? I think we learned that from the last blog, or the one before it, a recent blog. Um, what do you guys think about friendly fire and how that's going to affect what
It
you're doing in
had
the
to
game?
exist. It had
It's
to exist
yeah,
in a
it's
game
important.
like this. It had to, with magic being as dangerous as it is, with gods that can cause as much direct intervention as they can, or not, and with the nature of such a player-driven game, it had to exist. You know, um, I wouldn't have found it. I hate to use the word realistic, but when it comes to a game, but yeah, I wouldn't have found it realistic if friendly fire didn't exist.
Yeah, and
It
not
also
just
reinforces the tactics. Or go ahead.
I
Sorry,
was
sorry.
gonna say it's
Or,
not just the
or
friendly fire with weapons and spells, but then the idea of crafting and harvesting and that stuff. There's definitely a lot of danger if you don't know what you're doing, if you're not using the right tools, if you don't even have the tools that you need. Like you're trying to cut something 90 degrees, you don't have a little box with a little notch in it. You're just trying to do that freely. You're going to cut it at the wrong angle. If it's too strong a material, your blade might slide. You might even be able to bite into it. Blade might cut in the or break in the process. At least you've got that little box, so if the blade snaps, it's not going to whip around and slap you in the wrist and cut you bad or something. All of that sort of stuff. Making sure you've got a saw that's actually rated for the material that you've got. Chopping something down, making sure that the head doesn't fly off of your axe and hit your fellow lumberjack. All sorts of stuff like that. Doing something in a dangerous area, something snaps and then you tumble off the side of a tree or whatever when your harness breaks. There's so much danger, and making sure that all of your equipment is in shape before you start taking an action seems like a really big deal and a really, really major part of the trade process. That if your things get damaged, you have to get it repaired, or you
Yep.
face serious risk and potentially won't even be able to finish the job, which means can't pay your rent, can't eat, kids die, bad things.
Yeah, one of the other things I wonder about, just even thinking of a cook slicing and accidentally slicing into their hand, and what
Whoops.
kinds of damage that you might
Yeah.
get while crafting. Over in when I played Darkest Dungeon on the lower levels, um, if I get hit with a bleed or a blight, I don't usually use a bandage to fix that or use anti venom to fix that. If I'm in battle, I've got a doctor, my plague doctor will cure that. But if we're just walking around, like I walk into a trap and I get a blight or a bandage, I won't necessarily fix that. Eventually, it's my character's going to stop bleeding and the blight's going to end. That's good enough. I can imagine crafting something and being like, I'm not going to take care of that sliced hand right now. I'll do that later. And possibly forgetting about that. Would I forget about that in such a fashion that it becomes a scar? I wonder about the timing of that. Um, there's lots of times that we get hurt in games and we're like, yeah, okay, I'll deal with that later. I can ignore that, and I wonder how easy it will be to ignore some of those things um, while we're playing Revival. Because that's gonna, if you slice into your hand and you don't fix it, that's gonna impact your nimbleness as you're crafting, things like that. That's kind of fascinating.
Or could get infected and then you die
Yep.
from blood poisoning. Whoops.
Huh.
Yeah, a lot of things can go wrong there. And especially very specific like work related injuries. Like if you're a chef and you cut your hand, you didn't lose 50% of your health right there or anything, but your hand is messed up. It's not going to be fully functional until it gets taken care of. So if your hand gets cut or whatever, and then a fight breaks out or whatever, you can still strap a buckler on your wrist and still go out into battle. But it's probably not going to be that comfortable,
Yeah,
and you should probably
that's not.
eventually
It's
get it
not.
taken care of.
It's not comfortable just finishing making your meal if you cut yourself.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well,
Whoops.
definitely, if you get a work-related injury, try not to die afterwards.
I
Yeah,
can't
who
wait
wants
for
to
the
be the
first
first?
Reddit.
So take care of your injuries though, because who wants to be the first one who's accumulated lots of tiny injuries, gets to anime's realm and sees the next guy's like, so how'd you die? Oh, epic battle. Yeah, like that. He's just like Snipe just said. Yeah,
Yeah.
one too many tomatoes.
Yeah, death
Yeah.
by 1,000 cuts.
I can't wait for the first Reddit post where someone crushes their friend with a tree by accident while felling it. I will giggle and chortle and chuck and haw and guffaw. It'll be great.
He crushed it.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I think friendly fire is a very good thing though. It reinforces tactics, right? Like you can't, you'll have to. It'll be good to use the shield wall mechanic instead of just having everyone stand around swinging wide arc, wide arc attacks where oh my buddy to the left and right can't get hurt, it's fine, right? And your archers left actually have to be somewhat sparing, or you might accidentally assassinate your commander from behind. Side note, if anyone's looking to assassinate a commander, do it from behind with an arrow. Stuff like that.
Yeah,
Instead of
trying
just
to
wantonly firing shots through your fence.
trying to fire on targets. If you're able to maintain like a semicircle, that's going to be a lot safer. Anytime where you have to crossfire at a single target, you're
Yeah.
at risk of hitting your buddy on the other side. So
yeah.
that sort of stuff definitely matters. And then what I think of that is then what kind of tactics are we going to be able to use to mitigate friendly fire? For example, will a phalanx style shield wall sort of thing where you've got mostly your spears and giant shields to protect everybody and just kind of holding the line with that, is that going to be viable? And then on what scale is that viable? If you've got three people doing that, is that actually going to be worthwhile? Or people 3v3, are you just going to be at a disadvantage because you're not as mobile? So,
Right.
tactics and friendly fire definitely do matter because on one hand, you're not going to be poking your buddies, you're going to be helping defend them with the shield. On the other hand, you don't know if maybe you're going to deflect too big of a blow and your shield accidentally hits your buddy in the face. I don't know if that's going
Or
to
or
happen.
the commander who decides it's worth you know having your archers fire volleys right into your own troops, because at that point the melee's gotten so close you'll hit your enemies. The other commander won't do it. It's not a risk they're willing to take. I mean, these things will play out. I don't think your men will like you. So,
Well, that's what
my,
conscripts are for.
yeah,
Yeah, it had me wondering too about the opposite. If you can have friendly fire, then you should be able to have enemy heals um, inadvertently or accidentally. But I don't know what form that's going to take in terms of magical healing. So Snipe's response was that he can't think of any healing that's projectile that somebody could just run in front of your attempt to lob a healing spell at somebody. But I was also thinking in terms of location spells, areas of effect, where you can have consecrated ground or something like that. and enemies, anybody who walks in there would uh, be healed or get a
Eh,
buff boon.
You know, now thinking about it, it's not even like necessarily the delivery mechanism, but the actual mechanic for how the healing works. Is it something that rapidly accelerates the person's, ability to heal and regenerate, or is it something that specifically targets their wounds and tries to magically suture and repair them? Because if it's the latter, I would imagine it would actually have some sort of directing to it that you can't just will it into being, that you actually have to focus on that nasty wound on that person's leg that you're trying to seal magically from a distance. So depending on how that magic itself actually works. Or then the other one is most definitely proximity. If you actually only have healing potions and salves and stuff like that, you're not going to chuck a potion at somebody. It's like, you've healed my leg and there's glass in it. That doesn't make sense. So,
Yeah, yeah, and
Don't
I
take
was
it out,
thinking
it's blocking the artery.
Zero mentions this too, the temporal damage. So that's what I was wondering if you have uh, something that slows time, so it delays the effects of the wound. That seems like a possibility and could potentially be area of effect as well. But
Yeah.
I just don't know what forms of magical healing we will have. Not a lot, I
That said,
think.
though, I
But
think
And
there are ways around it.
with yeah, and well, with how hard magic as a whole will be, how skilled a mage must be to be able to do any of that, it does make me question: is it more efficient to try to do that big AOE heal on your troops, or just blow up the enemy troops and hope for the best?
healing in battle, though, doesn't really seem like a thing that's going to happen very much. It seems more like the kind of
Oh, it
game
sure
where
doesn't.
the battle resolves, and then whoever's left gets to take care of themselves.
Yeah,
It's not so
Yeah.
much like a conventional MMO where you've got a tank who's taking thousands and thousands of damage and trading it back to the other tank or whatever, and sustaining damage from three rogues and a warlock and everything while the two healers keep them up. That's absolutely nothing like that. Maybe in some other realm of the game's existence, magic and energy is flowing at that high a level that is how you interact. But in the mortal realm, absolutely not.
Yeah.
and it's cool because it really does raise the value of healers beyond the traditional MMO where they're just heal bots. I mean, suddenly having shurikens and the like matter so much. Especially over multi-day battles, where you'll see these things really resolve down to who can get the most number of players back into the next day.
Yeah. And I think though pragmatically there are probably ways to work around friendly fire depending on the technique that you're using, like especially if we're talking like AoE magic. Um, if you assume, like, let's assume for the case of the argument that there is, there are enough magic users together doing a particular ritual magic spell that they can, pull it off, right? And so let's say it's uh, calling down the wrath of Nodens, right, to strike everyone with lightning in an area because, fuck it, lightning strikes are badass, and we all want to follow that rule. Cool. And so uh, one could one could imagine that if it's a potent enough spell, that people who are aligned positively with Nodens karmically, or I guess one could instead put it the other way and say people who are sufficiently karmically aligned against Nodens, e.g., by following outer gods and stuff like that, then the lightning will smart target those individuals, and you won't have to worry about blasting your own dudes unless they're literally clashing swords and the lightning arcs across and they go boom and they die. So
That's how I
something
want to
like
go
that.
out.
yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking was kind of along the lines too of karmic. If it's a location based, um, if you walk into that area, it could be based on your karma and alignment with the specific god. I had not thought about the ramifications of like having a plague, like the Passover, where the plague
Yeah.
is going to come in. So then you have to have it's going to hit anybody there unless you do this specific thing to prevent the plague from happening. Um, and I would assume kind of a similar thing again if you can have a plague hit an area, you should be able to have some kind of blessing or heal or something for an area. Um, but again, that kind of thing would be anybody in the area for the most part. Um, you know, I'm just curious to see what we're gonna see.
Yeah.
Um, but if you lob a fireball, it's fire. So you know,
Yeah.
you just
Fire,
got hit by fire.
fire. You just conjured fire into this world. What it does is, what fire does.
Fire, do fire things. It just pops out because all the oxygen in the air in that area dissipates and is consumed.
All right, that'll be interesting.
So
Yeah, it doesn't actually.
rip fireball, you know.
Now, I guess the other one that's a little interesting to me is if tagging will actually care whether you intentionally or accidentally committed friendly fire, like, after the battle, if there's any prompt to be, apologize to the person or not do it and kind of sneer that, I sure got you, sucker. Like how that would apply, because whether you're, if you friendly fire a lot unintentionally because you're just really a poor shot or whatever, that's one thing. You're clumsy. You should be denoted as such. But if you are this chaotic evil person that all you try to do in a fight is try to get both sides worn down enough that you can then take everybody's stuff at the end, then yeah, your friendly fires are intentional, and now you're more of a
You definitely have to be
an
building some
unreliable
karma
fighter.
on that. Negative karma.
Have you not played MMOs, Nero? I mean, that's not the way it works. Inadvertently killing people. That. Oh, I'm sorry. We wiped. My bad. Oh, I'm sorry. We wiped. My bad. That. You can apologize all you want.
Yeah, I
But
did
not
that. I did
that.
that back in Diablo to some dude. It's like I dropped a firewall on him. It's like, oh, sorry, revive, kill him again. Oh, whoops, did it again. Then like 4 or 5 times before he finally leaves, it's like, hey, I've got your ears, sucker.
Yeah. No.
I miss it. I really look forward to hopefully getting trophies out of your kills in this.
Killing just
Belt of
because you suck.
ears,
That's gonna piss people off.
belt of noses might do better. Yeah.
Yeah. Bring
No, but
Dixon.
honestly,
He'll
lots of
probably
lots
kill
of
us.
friendly fire is probably a technique for getting into some sort of secret deity realm of of clumsiness and mishaps, where it's just literally fucking the randomizer is turned all the way to 10. Survive. Yeah. But sorry, Dick. I was talking to Ree there.
No, I was just saying that I'm assuming there will be people will be saying, don't bring them along because he's just gonna kill you. He's gonna kill you. He's gonna kill you. You don't want him here. He
That's unless they are good at trading out their aliases and.
he means well, but he sucks. Yeah, there's a character in what was in Farscape. So the main hero, American hero of Farscape, John Crichton, I think is his name. Um,
Yeah.
he's on this alien ship. He's the only human around, and every time they get into some kind of dire circumstance that they have to escape from, he comes up with the plan, and all the other aliens turn to him and go, "That's the dumbest plan I've ever heard of." He's like, "No, no, but it's gonna work." And every time it fails, and they're like, "We told you, don't listen to him. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's not from around here. Don't listen to him." And it was because every other show, it's the good-looking white guy, American white guy, who comes up with the plan. He's gonna save the day. And on this show, they're like, "No, you know nothing about living here. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. It's never gonna work." And it actually never works. One of the best things about that show. His heart was in the right place, but
His heart was in the right place, and now yours is in the wrong place. That's good.
yeah. Um,
Friendly fire. Oh man, just the idea that you're reaching into somebody's bag trying to find their healing potion. You find a potion you think is for healing. They've got it marked for healing. They know it's not for healing, but you don't, and you just pour acid down their throat. Well, they're definitely dead
Oh,
now.
oh God, that's a terrible way to
Oh,
go.
rip. Oh, savage.
Well,
God, no bueno.
or they can't read the label and they just take a guess and don't know the
Right.
symbology either.
The red wire or the blue wire?
See, that's one of those circumstances where after that happened, I would max the reading skill on, or the language skill on any character that I had.
Only get
Reading
burned
is
once.
fundamental.
Yeah.
hmm so one of the other, we could stay on this for a few more minutes, but one of the other interesting threads that I read was how Lovecrafty is Revival going to be? And I think they were worried about, well, it's one of the, I used to think this wasn't cool, but um, once I got into Revival and actually started reading Lovecraft heavily, it is actually a lot of fun. The concept is of reading Lovecraft is that most likely the protagonists are going to die, and if you're lucky enough that they don't die, they're going to be crazy. Um, the likelihood that they're going to succeed unscathed is very low. And Snipe Hunter responded that he wouldn't say that characters in Revival are predestined to fail in all cases or even most cases. But, you know, it can be difficult to succeed. It can be challenging. But a lot of times we won't necessarily even realize what the consequences are until later. So we could do something and find that we're successful or think that we're successful, but then find out that we've also raised a revenant king that will come after us and try and kill us, and maybe kill a whole bunch of other people in the process of trying to reach us. Um, those aspects are kind of fascinating. I mean, that's one of the other layers that I'm looking forward to seeing. Is we don't always know the ramifications of our actions. That could be a lot of fun.
I think it's definitely it's kind of the core of the fun is that we don't know how everything's going to play out. We have to actually go along with it as the passenger of our own story, just like life. You know?
Right? I saved the princess, but you killed the village. Like, you know, that
Well,
idea of like Superman too, when he's like supposedly saving Metropolis, but demolishing buildings in the process.
Yeah.
well, it's I guess with Superman, it's kind of the idea that saving Metropolis slash saving the world from something that it won't stop after Metropolis or whatever, but that just happens to be the city of collateral damage in that story. So the way it was answered, maybe a 7, even a 6.5. The idea that the presence of one of the Cthulhu was one of their level of terror is basically just the end of the world. That instead there is some way, maybe not necessarily easy, to actually defeat it and go on. That it's not end story, join a new server status at that point, which if this was that kind of game, that would be a great way to do it. But I think the idea is for this story to go on for a good long time, not just to be like 3 years and then Cthulhu's going to come and everybody's dead, like more like the board games would be.
Well, I think that's going to be one of the biggest things too. That's the event that everyone secretly hopes for, right? Well, who was it? Somebody said, somebody famously said, everyone at the deep in their hearts is waiting for the end of the world. Um, when that happens, when that cataclysmic event happens, that's kind of the culmination of the server, right? Everyone gets to try to fight against it, and the devs have implied that you have that chance of being able to overturn the event, to succeed and win. But then we get to deal with the fallout of that, and that alone will, just aside from the amazing experience of fighting to save the world, it'll be actually really interesting to see how hard it is to pick up the world afterwards. 'Cause
Well,
it's not easy.
here's the thing to kind of trip out on for a moment: the idea that what realm of existence, what plane is that God actually trying to destroy? Are they trying to destroy the mortal realm? Are they trying
Yeah.
to destroy Anime's realm? The mortal realm could be completely destroyed and wiped off of existence, and the server doesn't have to go down. It would actually become quite interesting because now you would be living in essentially echoes of the world that used to be in different planes where it's been scattered and shattered and everything, and potentially you could restore it, or potentially all life and existence going forward goes on in the different planes, and now it's almost a completely different experience just on that server.
That'd be
Well,
pretty
that's
wild.
also permadeath mode, because now
Yeah.
you're trying to not get fetched, right? There's no more in and out of this shit, right?
Yeah.
Your anime's fetches are out there. You either depose and destroy anime and make and make everyone live forever, or you're gonna die for sure when those dogs come around. So I hope you brought your whatever anti-fetcher
I,
shit there is. But yeah.
I would not only be willing, I would love to see this event happen, if only just to see the confusion as everyone starts logging in for the day and log straight into Anime's realm or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, I was
Right.
okay with that. Yeah, one of the things it has me thinking of, I'm partially thinking of watching Ombwa play Darkest Dungeon. He high on his totem pole is not keeping his characters alive necessarily. Like he thinks of them more as fodder. Um, And so sometimes his goal is just to go in and come back with a few heirlooms and a few pieces of gold. He doesn't care about anything else. He doesn't care about finishing the quest. As long as he can jump in and come back out with some gold and some heirlooms, he's happy. So you have to think about what each individual's goal actually is, because we might not have the same goals. So I'm imagining somebody saying, "What did you do when Cthulhu was here trying to destroy our world? What did you do to save us?" "Well, I fed everybody. I didn't fight, but I cooked really well." Um, that might be important.
It should be.
Maybe that's all you want to do. You don't want to jump into combat. You just want to cook and keep
Armies march
people
on their
healthy.
stomachs.
Yep.
You know that's good too.
You only fight as good as your last meal.
Yeah, and that means that the cooks are important, which means the farmers are important, and the livestock, the ranchers, they're important too.
Supply line, you got to make sure you
Yeah.
don't get overextended. And Sun Tzu was saying resources from the enemy are worth 5 times as resources from the supply line.
There you go.
Oh, but it's true.
What did you? I stole food really well.
Yeah, yeah, that's legit. Bakers, bread bakers will become so important.
I mean, I think of the other side of cooking is part of the story that of the battle that we know of in Hanukkah, that the soldiers were being fed all this greasy, fatty food that was going to weigh them down and make them all sleepy, so that way it'd be easier to take them down with guerrilla tactics, which is historically what had happened. So if you don't have the right kind of food and you're going to be all weighed down and gassy the next day, well, they're going to take advantage of it.
I would take advantage of being gassy. Why not?
No, you get them feeling uncomfortable.
Madness-inducing gas.
So while they're sitting there grumbling and farting up a storm, you're firing arrows from the
I'd be
mountaintops.
firing out some farts. Why not?
So that miasma system at play.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But that's there's just as much to making sure that the food is helping you as to making sure the food is not harming you.
See, that's. Go ahead, finish. I
No,
just
no,
have
that's go ahead.
try.
What you
No,
got? What you got?
I want to send out an army of stank of stank drones. Get a bunch of people who have their stank stat like maxed. Send them over to the enemy and see what happens.
So everybody like eating and wearing haggis, basically.
With extra garlic.
Huh.
The Vermin King,
When-
Lord of
Yeah,
Awful.
because
Nope,
you know
I'll just log out. Not worth it.
they had back in the day certain people when they had protocols for certain things, and you could kind of overwhelm. Like I think one of the mythic tales that we have, legendary tales that we have, is um, how during the Revolutionary War the Americans were using various forms of guerrilla tactics, and the British Army was like, "What are you doing? You have to stand in a line and
Yeah, and fire and volley
Right, a
fire.
gentleman's war.
That's the proper
in bright
way.
red
You can't,
coats.
yeah, you can't just fire from anywhere." And I also read it was something like during World War II, the German soldiers would not um, disturb people who were having sex. So the Allies would sometimes be holed up in houses, and when the Germans came through, they would go upstairs with the lady, and they would just make noises like they're having sex, and the Germans would be like, "Oh, we'll leave. We won't search this house because that's going on." It's like, what could you do that could just freak out the other side so much that they just are like, "Yeah, never mind. We'll do this later." Um, do you fight on Christmas? Do you fight on the holidays? Like, um, of course we're not going to fight on a holiday. It's a holiday, and who's going to go along with those protocols? Who will not? All of those things. I mean, it's a revival is a game, a video game at the end of the day. So I think we are not going to have a lot of players who are going to conform to protocols like that.
Well,
But
and it's a game that certainly encourages you to be finding ways around protocol anyways, so...
It
uh,
it seems like following protocol would be something if you're like an official soldier in the military or something and they have rules. It's up to you whether you want to potentially risk getting tags as insubordinate for going outside of protocol, even though you know it's the thing you need to do, or potentially being labeled as a hero for going outside of protocol and doing the thing that saves the day, even with the risk of being labeled insubordinate. So for something that's very much high protocol like that, I could see it being a lot more of a big deal. But for most like adventure sorts, I wouldn't expect them to stand in a shield wall and defend the honor of some noble or something if it gets insulted. They're like, yeah, it's your own business. I don't care.
that being said, I am looking forward to seeing how shield wall combat works out.
And don't forget, you can
Yeah.
be tagged as both. You can be both insubordinate and a hero, depending on who's looking at you.
Yeah.
So,
Uh-huh. James
break
Cheeker
all
and
them rules you
Lines.
want, dude. You might as well. You might end up going rogue, take half the army with you, and go full Scipio Africanus somewhere. Just do what you want.
Sure.
Cool. Well, we should wrap up. We're already going at a half hour over. We've got 6 minutes left for that. Anything else you guys wanted to talk about before we start wrapping up?
I can't really think of what you got. What you got, Sale?
I was just going to kind of give a looking ahead at what to look forward to next week. It looks like the estates are still kicking and stuff. We're going to have some tours by the sound of it. I guess Kedron will be giving a video tour of each of the estates called Golden Key Tours. Seems pretty coolio. Next week's blog is going to be vaguely about systems decisions. In other words, it's going to be about black magic, but we just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, I don't think there's anything super interesting on the horizon aside from, crazy things that will make all of our minds explode, like normal.
I get furniture delivered to the house next week, and that's what I'm looking
Oh,
for.
Nice.
how you?
In game or in real life?
No, here. I've been sitting on this. I've been sitting on this uncomfortable wooden stool this entire time, and and if I'm not here, I'm like lounging on the stairs because that's the closest I have to.
There you go.
So what happened there? You moved to a new house? And
Yeah,
there's no
yeah.
furniture there? Okay.
Well, we haven't. We've been moving things over slowly, and the furniture will all come as a. We paid movers to move all the furniture, all the heavy stuff next. But that's not till next Saturday. So
Okay. Yeah, that can be fun. Camping indoors.
yeah. I mean,
In
we moved the
Alaska,
important
of all
stuff.
places.
We moved
Yeah.
the important stuff. I brought over the TV, the Xbox, computer, whatnot.
Say that.
And so the kid is in that room now, designated the game room, and that's where she's been since she got here. So
There you go.
yeah,
Yep.
take care of the
Yep.
priorities.
Yep.
Anyways,
And
no,
I
it was
think
good.
as long as you have internet these days,
We
as
could
long as
survive.
yeah, I'm pretty good to go. Um, that is
Yep.
like pretty much the number one thing. I've got to have internet access or
Yeah.
cell phone access, kind of both.
Yeah.
But internet, one or the other, it's internet is more important than cell service.
And the Surface can run Stardew Valley, so I've had some level of entertainment.
There you go.
Anyways, guys, thank you.
Okie doke. Yeah, we can wrap up. We don't have to spend the next 3 minutes of time.
Well, I guess one last thing I wanted to say, other than, of course, thanks for having me on here again. Glad I was able to join up, and glad that the show went well. My internet's been it's been showing in the red for frames the entire time, but zero drop frames. So I think it might just be that I set the bitrate higher than the my internet connection can normally support. But hey, looks like it turned out fine. So glad I was able to help out with that, and yeah, it's definitely great to be on here again. Definitely looking forward to being on again in the future. There's always stuff to talk about, and I definitely have a giant list of things to talk about. So, yeah,
Well, real quick, Nero, do you have a house
yeah.
in Revival?
House. No, you see, here's the thing. I'm either going to be looking for Fall Creek or that the Freeport that's northwest of it. Those are the two places that I'm kind of spotting. Assuming that I go with the seaside or windy kind of archery sort of setup as the main goal for that character. Chances are, though, like I was saying, I'm just going to be looking to be a dungeon crawler. So, if anything, my home, my infrastructure, or whatever, is going to be dedicated to preparing and repairing my equipment and all of that stuff. Map rooms and all of that, getting ready for the next excursion. And for all I know, I'm just going to end up joining a guild and just kind of stay in there. Who knows? Guild house.
Okay.
So, not really 100% sure how that's going to go. I don't really want a place in Crown's Rock. The place just seems like it smells really bad. I just don't want to live
Certain
there.
places, just certain places. Like I'm thinking northwestish, but yeah,
You don't like the vivacious smell of raw sewage? What's wrong with you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just you're
about
alive.
that.
Okie doke. Well, that can do us, I think. It was fun having Nero back again, as always. And Zero, we're going to kind of make Zero a regular, I think, but he doesn't really know that.
I'm so sorry. This is bad if you can't find better quality than me.
Oh.
We just like having you on. But